feeling it's not. I think feeling it's more urban, although they said it was more. Okay, I'll call the Washington County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Begin with a moment of silent prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to begin with the public hearing for the Board of Supervisors tentative plan for county and municipal redistricting. Could the county clerk please read the notice of public hearing?
Notice is hereby given that pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 59.10 sub 3 sub B, a public hearing will be conducted by the Washington County Board of Supervisors at 6 p.m. on September 8th, 2021 in room 1019 of the Herbert J. Tenney's Government Center, 432 East Washington Street, West Bend, Wisconsin, 53095, to provide comment on the Board of Supervisors tentative plan for county and municipal redistricting. A copy of the tentative plan for the county and municipal redistricting can be viewed or obtained at the Washington County Clerk's Office or online at the Washington County website. Immediately following the public hearing, the Board of Supervisors and county staff will evaluate input received at the public hearing, together with such other and further relevant information, and take action concerning adoption of the Board of Supervisors tentative plan and resolution for county and municipal redistricting at the meeting. If you have any questions or require further information, please contact the county clerk's office. All interested parties will be heard. A quorum of the county board or county board committee may be present at the public hearing, but no official action will be taken. Dated this day, the 25th of August, 2021.
Okay, the public hearing is hereby open. We're going to begin with Eric Damcott, our manager of GIS to show us how we got to where we are today.
Thank you. My name is Eric Damcut. I've had the privilege of assisting Washington County in the technical aspects of redistricting in 2001, 2011, the interim redistricting in 2015, and now the redistricting in 2021. This is the presentation, or at least a subset of it, that I gave at the executive committee a few weeks ago. Chairman Krefall asked that I reprise that presentation here. So my apology in advance if you have to suffer through it the first time and now have to see it again. So it's important when we talk about redistricting to start with the census. That's where it all begins for us. And this specifically the US Census block. Blocks are the smallest entity for which the Census Bureau collects and tabulates decennial census information. Typically that's bounded on all sides by visible features such as roads, water, and railroads, as well as non-visible features such as municipal boundaries. These blocks are then grouped together to create municipal wards and county supervisory districts. When creating those districts, we can't split the census block. The only real exception is when annexations have occurred. We can split the block to accommodate that annexation. And it is fully enacted annexations. It's not, stuff that's in the pipeline or rumors that we think are coming. So this is a screenshot, just kind of an example of what a census block looks like. This is in the northwest part of the village of Germantown and town of Germantown. And again, you can see those census blocks bounded on all sides by water, municipal boundaries, railroads, roads. Behind each one of those census blocks, there's demographic information that tells us how many people live in that block and some of the basic characteristics about those people. So for 2020, Washington County was split into 2,605 census blocks, ranging from 0 to the largest block having 649 people. 438 of those blocks contain no population. These are primarily water and right-of-way areas. 2,167 contain at least one person, and of those blocks, the average size is 63. There's really many ways that these blocks can be combined to create legal districts. Redistricting is divided into 3 stages. We are currently nearing the end of stage 1. Much of what we do in stage 1 relates to the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution, and specifically the Equal Protection Clause. The districts that we create need to be substantially equal in population. Generally, if the total deviation of the plan is within 10%, it's being judged as complying with the one person, one vote rule. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 also protects the voting rights of racial minorities, which plays an important part in redistricting. So those are our 2020 populations. Total county population is now 136,761. You can see the municipal breakdown there. We divide the county into a 21 district plan. Each of your districts will now average 6,512 people. Looking at it another way, the city of West Bend has the population to support a shade under 5 districts. The village of Germantown, 3 and apart. City of Hartford, just under 2.5. The village of Richfield, a little bit under 2. The village of Jackson, just over 1. Every other municipality has a population that's smaller than 6,512, which means that we're going to have to combine populations from those municipalities together to create a single supervisory district. One of the directions that was given to us early on in the process was to try to maintain proportionate representation for our cities, towns, and village residents. As you can see, the plurality of residents in Washington County live in village, followed by cities, with 28% living in our towns. But geography matters when we're working on this. If we take the village of Kewaskum, which has about 4,300 people, and we put that in one district, I really can't add more village people to that district. I need to go to the neighboring communities, in this case, 2,200 people from adjacent towns. These are not the districts on the proposed map. These are created before the census data even came out and just on the screen for illustrative purposes. But if we drew that district, we'd end up with a district that's 66% village and 34% town. An alternative would be to divide the village right in half, in which case we'd put 2154 in each of two districts. In this case, we would need to find 4,358 people from adjacent towns to fill out those districts. Now we have two districts that would be 67% town and 33% village. Turning our attention to the village of Newburgh, which has just over 1,000 people in it. Again, my only choice is to add people from a neighboring town to create that district. In this case, we'd have a district that's 84% town and 16% village. There's really no viable alternative that would have the village of Newburgh in a majority village district. It has to go with one of the neighboring towns just based on where it is in proximity to the other areas of the county. Looking at the city of Hartford, has a population of 15,617. And as I said before, it was a little under 2.5 supervisors. In that case, the most likely scenario is that you would take the city of Hartford and to create two districts that are 100% city. But if you do that, you're left with about 2,600 people that can't be added to another city district. They're going to need to be added to a split district. Likely the neighboring towns might look something like this. In this case, you would have a district that's 60% town and 40% city. When you adopt your tentative supervisory district plan, that initiates redistricting stage 2, and that's the part where municipalities create and adopt their ward plans. For Village of Germantown, the City of West Bend, and the City of Hartford, it's also where they'll begin to look at their elected trustee or alderperson districts. Wards don't need to be equal in population, but they do need to fall within statutory ranges, and those ranges depend on the total population of those municipalities. So those over 10,000, which is City of West Bend, Village of Germantown, City of Hartford, and Village of Richfield, their wards are going to have to be between 600 and 2,100. The town of Germantown, which is under 300 people, they actually don't have to create wards if they don't have to, but they are able to if they so choose. Every other municipality in the county needs to fall within that 300 to 1,000 person range for their wards. And again, for those that have aldermanic and trustee districts, they are subject to that substantially equal standard for those districts as well. So a bit about ward creation, just so that you understand what the next phase of this will entail. If the town of Farmington is split into two districts, and they hope to create wards that look like this, Ward 3 is going to create a conflict because that ward can only be in one supervisory district. If, on the other hand, they created wards that look like this, and each of those 5 wards fell within the 300 to 1,000 person population threshold, this would be a valid plan. For those areas that do have elected districts, Germantown being one of them, it's a little bit more complicated. Again, if the county puts down supervisory districts that look like those green lines on the screen, and the village were to create wards that look like this, and again, each one of those wards is in only one supervisory district, those wards also needs to work with their trustee districts. Each one of those wards can only be in one trustee district and only one supervisory district. There's other things the municipalities and the county clerk really look at closely, and that is ballot styles. The Village of Rich, now these are old slides, I didn't update these, so these are actually based on 2,000 districts. But back then there were 4 school districts in the Village of Richfield. And if the county put down 4 supervisory districts, we've now created at a minimum 13 different ballot styles that they need to keep track of on election day and make sure that those voter gets the correct ballot and are voting in the correct races. So as much as we can follow municipal lines, as much as we can follow other elective districts, this more straightforward and the easier that's going to be for both the voter as well as the election workers. Redistricting stage 3, after the last municipality in the county adopts their wards, is where we resolve any conflicts between the county plan and the municipal wards. Now, in an ideal world, District 3 is really easy. Stage 3 is really easy because any of those conflicts that have been identified, we've already worked out a solution as the municipalities have been going through their ward plans. So this is really more of a, adopting what the county and the municipalities have already worked out in stage 2. We don't want any surprises in stage 3. So when does this happen? Let's talk about the normal redistricting timeline. Normally, the apportionment numbers would have been delivered to the president by the end of last year. The redistricting data would have been released to us by the end of March. We then would have had 60 days to adopt a tentative plan, the municipality 60 days to develop their wards, and 60 days to do all that reconciliation and adopt the final plan. All of that is leading up to the date of December 1st, when candidates begin circulating nomination papers for the spring nonpartisan elections. That's what's supposed to happen. What did happen is that the census didn't release the redistricting data set until August 12th. But that December 1st deadline still stands. So what normally takes 180 days, we're really compressing in order to get this done in time for next spring's election. And I believe that we can do it. So I don't think the quality of your plan is going to suffer because of that. It just means we don't have time to dawdle and take our time. So how are we going to get from August 12th to November 23rd, which is really the date that we care about, because that's when the county clerk and all the municipal clerks have to publish their type A election notice for the upcoming election. And that's the day it needs to be published. If some of these newspapers have a week lead time in order to get the published, they need to get that to the newspaper ahead of time. So I can't say enough good things about our partners at the Legislative Technology Services Bureau. They took like 4 days, and that was over a weekend in there, where they took the census data, they did the formatting that they needed for it, and they opened up the software that they wrote to initiate the local process. Between August 16th and August 24th, our executive committee prepared and recommended a tentative supervisory district plan, and that's what you're voting on tonight. Between August 25th and October 15th, local governments are preparing and adopting a ward plan. The county tentative plan won't become official until after the public hearing, after you take into account anything that comes up at the public hearing, and you adopt that tentative plan. But local governments were encouraged to begin drafting their ward plans immediately after the executive committee action to get a head start on it. The caveat, of course, is that if you make changes to that tentative plan, some of those municipalities may have to rework what they did. So they are well aware of the risk, I guess, of starting a little bit early. But we need local governments to adopt their wards by October 15th, and many of them are well on their way of having that done. I've worked with a number of them over the past week and a half, and I feel really comfortable where we are right now. Then between October 15th and November 10th, any differences between the county and the local plans will be reconciled. The cities will adopt their aldermanic districts with a Class 2 notice. The county will hold another public hearing that requires a Class 3 notice, and the county will adopt its supervisory district plan. All of that will get us to where we need to be so that we can have 21 districts next April. So the process for actually preparing a plan, I'll talk briefly about that, and then I will open it. I will end my prepared comments here, but we started this out by the GIS division met and discussed the goals that were previously set forward by the Structure Advisory Committee. The goals that we were given were equal population, compact districts, follow municipal lines to the extent possible, make sure that we bring proportional representation from our city, village, and town residents, and also to minimize ballot styles. Notice that one of the things not in the list was where you currently live. We were explicitly told not to take into account current incumbents when we were drafting the plan. We then had each of the 3 GIS staffers independently create plans. The existing plan was not used as a starting point, in part because our current target population is 6,512. Current districts have about 5,073. So if we were to start with the existing plan, we would pick the first district and we would immediately be about 1,500 people short for that district. When we pull 1,500 people from a neighboring district, that second district doesn't look anything like it did already. And that problem will just continue to perpetuate itself through the county as we assign districts. Additionally, doing an interim redistricting is not ideal when it comes to creating districts of equal population. As I mentioned previously, we have census blocks to work with this time around. In 2015, we could only go back to the local wards, and some of those wards had 2,000 people in it. We were moving 2,000 people to this district or this district. We couldn't split that and equalize that. Consequently, your current plan has a plan deviation of over 21%, which is far greater than the 10% that is typically deemed the one person, one vote. So how do you create a plan? There's a couple different ways that I found work well. One of them is to just pick a spot to start. Maybe you start the northeast corner, the southwest corner, or wherever, and you just start there and you take into account the goals set forward by the Structure Advisory Committee, and you see where that leads you. Another approach is that you can look at the population of municipalities and start where the populations and district sizes mesh. So we've had this in previous redistricting efforts, and we had it here too, where if you take the population of the town of Barton and you add it to the population of the town of Farmington, by golly, it just about is perfect in population size. So it kind of made sense to put those 2 municipalities together and not split them up into multiple districts. You can also pick one of the priorities of the Structure Advisory Committee and just focus on that alone. So maybe you're trying to get as equal districts as possible, or maybe you're trying to maximize the extent that you can follow in municipal lines. All of those are valid places to start, but likely the plans all are a combination of those as you're going through. So the process to assign blocks to districts, again, following municipal boundaries was one of the goals. Following other major highways or landmarks, so it's easy to define where those districts are. If you're in Hartford, it's easy to say, if you're north of 60, you vote in this district. If you're south of 60, you vote in this other district. 33 in West Bend's another example, 60 in Slinger. So if you need to divide those up, nice visible landmarks are always good to follow. We also need to be cognizant of municipal boundary and block populations. And lastly, you really can't, paint yourself into a corner. If you create a great district of Kewaskum and Barton and Addison, but don't fully take into account the population of Wayne, you painted yourself into that corner out there. You can't leave pockets of population unassigned. So within the division, we each created a plan. We reviewed those plans together. We fine-tuned those plans. We had 3 plans that went to the executive committee. The executive committee unanimously selected one of those plans, and that's what you see here tonight. The last step was putting incumbents on the map, which is what most people saw at the last meeting, just to see where they were. But as I said, that was the last step, not a factor when we were drawing the districts. So within the packet materials, there was a map. There was a handout that showed district populations and the deviations. There was a report showing how each municipality was broken down into the districts. And then there was the reverse of that, where there was a report that showed each district and the municipalities that made up that district. So those are the prepared remarks that I have. If there's any technical questions, I'm happy to answer them. If there's political questions, I'll defer to someone else.
First open it up for citizen input. Is there anybody any citizens from the crowd that have any questions or any comments regarding the redistricting? Okay, on that side. Hearing no comments, close the public hearing. Need a motion and a second from the board Motion by Smisek, second by Bossert. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll open up the discussion. First off, thank you for the presentation. It was very helpful and it was very well put together, so I appreciate that. I'm no questions or critiques about the existing map in front of us. I guess my only question would be is there a possibility of it going up on the county's website before the final November 15th approval?
Yeah, we can put it up there right away in both a PDF form and an interactive form, if that's what you'd
And then
like.
the GIS form?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, see no further questions.
Oh,
What-
I'm
what
sorry,
else?
this is Pam,
Okay, Pam.
Supervisor
Conrad?
Conrad. I'm just wondering, does anybody have concerns about how we are shrinking down to the 21 versus the 26 supervisors? I'm a little concerned, maybe we put the cart before the horse with making that decision, not knowing how this redistricting would look. Do these seem like,
Supervisor Conrad, I'm gonna have to call you out of order. That's not
Okay.
germane to the conversation, sorry.
oh. Okay,
Yeah, February 20, 2020, we voted on this, so.
yeah, I know, I'm just curious if, maybe we put the cart before the horse on that, and is there any chance to get a visual of what it would look like if we were to stayed at 26 versus 21?
No.
Or seeing now that we have this mapped out, are there any
I'm
concerns?
sorry,
of
that
people-
we've had the discussion
Yeah.
and we've had the vote and we're moving forward on it. So again, you're not germane in the discussion. So hearing no further questions or for no further discussion, we'll vote on this electronically. And those that are at home, please call in. Or I'm sorry, text in. Everybody in? How many we got left? Good. Pam, are you trying to? Okay. What did she vote? She abstained? Yeah, you can call it. She abstained, yeah. Should be able to count it, right? Sure. Okay. Motion passes unanimously with one abstention. We're gonna move one thing up in the on the agenda. We're gonna hear 2021 Resolution 44, authorized purchase of property in town of Erin. Look for a motion to postpone. Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Kelly. Any discussion on that? We'll be postponing it to October. What is the date? Gotta be careful. We're postponing it due to the fact that we are still in negotiations with the town of Erin to possibly purchase property near the other tower that we used to be on. So in the meantime, we have to have this alternative available if that does not come to fruition. So Does that explain enough? Okay. So any other questions? Supervisor Sorcy?
Is that a tough one for you? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I had to get, I did get the cursor over there.
No. Did anybody get any calls from a certain person about, thank you,
You know,
Mr. Dairy Queen, appreciate
People are
that.
here. People
Yeah.
are, the people in the, people are here.
No, I just, because I just want to know, is it infringing on somebody else?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not familiar with the area.
Right. Okay. Okay. Hearing no other discussion, this will be postponed until October board meeting. Mhm. Yeah. Right. So we'll vote on this electronically. Everybody in? Motion passes unanimously. Also gonna move up to other things. Resolution 2020 Resolution 41, approved the updated county campus master plan. Need a motion? Motion Supervisor Schleif, Supervisor Schulteis. Have a brief presentation.
Quickly.
Sorry about that. Should be. You have 3 minutes. Let me turn you on here. Okay, you're on.
Great,
You're plugged in.
great. Thank you for your time tonight. We're excited to be here. We are returning from our work that's right in front of you from 2009, where we worked with the county on the master plan. So we're gonna just talk really quickly here. We see some friendly faces that were here years ago, but just to orient you who we are Potter Lawson. We're a planning and architecture firm based solely here in Wisconsin. My name's Rebecca. I'm a principal with the firm, been there 17 years, planning to retire in 21 from Potter Lawson. So I've got goals.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
I got 21 years to go. And this is Ron, who I'll introduce in a moment, but we are, again, focused in Wisconsin and really proud of our work, working with counties throughout the state. We're up to 32 now, many of them repeat, including Washington County, which we're honored to be here. So then I'm going to introduce Ron Locast, and Ron has been with us for 29 years and led this process, the original master plan back in 2009. So we're going to talk through a little bit about what that is.
Just going to give a brief overview of what we did back in 2009, and then talk about some of the goals moving forward with this new master plan in 2021. So just to kind of orient you on the map up on the screen there, that number 11 right there, that's East Washington Street or Highway 33. That's this piece right now that kind of intersects your properties that the county currently owns. You can see the government center called out there to the top up on 14. Oh, sure. Number 14, that is the law enforcement center, the jail, coming down to the courts, and then the administrative departments down on the south end of that. There you go. Back in 2009, we basically kind of developed two master plans. One was a short-term master plan. The other was a long-term master plan. The short-term master plan really dealt with a lot of the infrastructure around the site. We analyzed the utilities, stormwater management, site circulation, vehicular traffic versus pedestrian traffic, wayfinding, those kind of elements. And we addressed that on this map that you're seeing here. One of the issues back then, I'll just point out a couple items. One of the issues back then, of course, was you have a lot of your staff in the current PAC building, and they work on a daily basis with the people across the street in the government center. So there's this concern of crossing that traffic along the highway. So at the time, we looked at different options such as pedestrian bridges. We looked at a boulevarded street Our understanding is the county, since this master plan was put together, did approach the city and discuss the idea of having a boulevard street. My understanding was that was kind of shot down for the most part. Right. So that's still an issue to be addressed. Another component on the master plan was the closing off of Schmidt Road. That is something that you have done. One of the things when we addressed the issue of parking and getting people into the government center, all the entrances to the government center really align on that eastern side of the building. With the idea of parking being a further east, we want to minimize that pedestrian and vehicular circulation crossing. Again, trying to make the site more safely. And you guys have done that. Hopefully moving forward as we address some of these other issues on the long-term master plan, that will actually improve that situation. One of the last items that we dealt with on the site was identifying the public versus staff parking. And again, that has to do with security needs and how people enter the building, right? I'm going to talk about security in just a few minutes, but the idea here on this plan was the public really is parking primarily on the east side. And then just to the west of the government center, you can see an additional parking lot, and that could be primarily used for staff parking. So really trying to separate that and segregate where staff comes into the building, where public comes into the facilities. So those are some of the items we kind of dealt with on the short-term master plan. And then we addressed, after that, we addressed the long-term needs. Again, one of the big issues here that we wanted to deal with, and I'll start on the bottom, was that whole idea of moving your staff to the north side of Highway 33. We felt that was very important, trying to create a unified campus north of the highway. To date, you guys have eliminated and tore down the senior center and I believe the annex building. Those are taken down. One of the things we're going to want to address in this study is relocating the departments in the PAC, moving them to the north side. And what you see on this master plan back then was locating those departments in a new building identified as number 15 and 16 in that location over there. Now, that's not to say as we address the new master plan, maybe there's a better strategic location to locate those departments on the north side. Those are some of the things we're going to address in this new master plan. Other components on this master plan then was in area number 25. Right now, there's a lot of the highway department storage sheds. There's the gas pumps over in that location. This master plan at that time looked at relocating those up towards the highway department where you're seeing like the 6, 7, 8, 9 up in that area. What that does is that frees up that whole area, 25 and 17, to be used as public parking. With Schmidt Road being closed off and rerouting that traffic, now you've got a clear, easy pedestrian access from that public parking into those east side entrances into that facility. Another component in regard to parking that we looked at was potentially introducing gates. And I'm going to say just north of number 10 and just to the left of number 23, where you see those little arrows there. We identified 2 locations for gates to kind of cordon off that area for the staff parking area. Again, trying to improve security on the site and delineating where certain people can and can't be on site. And I believe when we were there, you've actually installed for sure the gate by number 23. And I didn't get up and around the other side if that's been gated off too at this time. But again, the intent, separating out where public can go, where staff can go. And that's critical throughout this whole process. When we're working on Government Services Center, dealing with that security issue of really controlling those circulation patterns starts on the outside of the building and then continues into in and throughout the facility. Another component in the 2009 master plan study that we did was we spent a little more extensive time at the PAC building. We did what we call a space needs assessment at that time for there's 5 or 6 departments over there, where we interviewed all the different departments, identified their space needs and their growth projected out over the next 10 years. Once that was in place, we actually did floor plan layouts, reorganizing those departments within that facility. It's been known to us now moving forward, we would like to address that same issue, but in a way that we can move those people across the street into the north side of the campus. So we did go through that whole analysis of space needs assessment. We addressed department adjacencies at that time. We talked about security and future expansion. And again, that's something we will want to do as we move forward with our master plan update. We're calling it drivers for this new master plan. We always recommend an update for a master plan for counties that we work with, roughly about 10 years, 10 to 15 years, to reevaluate your master plan. And you guys are pretty much in that window right now, that 10 to 15-year mark. So this is a good time for you guys to move forward with this. But again, a major goal for the county has always been, let's try to create a unified campus north of Highway 33. And that's really from an efficiency standpoint, from a security standpoint, safety standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. Get those apartments, and you can see up in the very upper right-hand corner where the PAC is. It's really about getting those apartments over across the street, potentially selling off that property, and getting everybody to the north side of 33. The space needs assessment. One of the things we'd like to address this time around is not only do a space needs assessment for those 5 or 6 departments in the PAC, but we also want to provide that space needs assessment for the entire government center. So that's going to total 25 to 30 departments. Again, address their needs so that we understand their growth projections and their need, so that when we come to the point of laying out, we call them stacking diagrams or adjacency studies, where we're locating different departments within the facility, we can actually use an accurate square footage number of what we think that growth will be. So for example, where we're showing additions back at this study on the white building there, you can see the yellow boxes and the green box there. Those are just right now, those are placeholders for the maximum amount of square footage. The idea this time is being, let's get a little more accurate count on square footage for those different departments. So that, for example, when we're talking about reorganizing the administrative departments, and maybe there's some adjacencies that might work better, maybe getting all the land use departments together, for example, on the same floor or something like that. We'll have a more accurate square footage account for those spaces as we move forward with that diagram. So we'd like to take the government center a step further than we did in the original master plan. I think it'd be a little more valued information for the county to have as we move forward. The infrastructure assessment, we understand right now that the county had an MEP infrastructure assessment done in 2019. The engineers that we'll be working with will look at that information and reevaluate it. They'll walk the building, they'll analyze your existing mechanical spaces and your equipment, and then review that report and give another updated assessment on that infrastructure. And then one of the things I do like to talk, I think we got another slide here, is just talk briefly about that post-pandemic work environment. It's something, as we're working with a lot of counties, it's always a topic of information, especially as we're dealing with space needs assessment. But before we get there, I do definitely want to talk about safety and security just briefly. Whenever we work with counties, that's the #1 driver. We always want to make sure that we're looking into the future of how we can create a safer environment, both for the public and your staff. And ways to do that, that really starts in these planning exercises. And as you can see there, circulation patterns, we always kind of dwell on that as we're laying out spaces and things. In a facility like this, you're really trying to isolate and separate 3 different circulation patterns. It's your public coming to the facility, it's how your staff interacts with that public, and how they move around the building in a safe way. And then, of course, your inmate transfer at the law enforcement center, getting inmates to the courts, all those kinds of things come into play as we lay this out. Now, I will say the county right now has done actually a really good job, especially with that inmate transfer. It works fairly well. But there might be some ways there, if we were going to add on, introduce an additional courts potential in the future, how we get inmates to those locations. So we want to address all those issues with the departments. The last slide, real quickly here, I want to talk about here is that post-pandemic work environment. It's a big question. It's kind of an unknown, right? With right now, we've seen a lot of counties, because of the pandemic, working remotely or part-time remotely, hybrid situations. And those are something we'll want to talk about the different departments. And I'm not sure if the county's actually come up with a policy for that at this point.
No, yeah.
But those are important because they can impact your square footage needs, right? It doesn't take as much square footage if people are working remotely. However, what we have been finding with a lot of the counties we've been working with is most counties feel like, you know, they're still public-facing departments. They're kind of the face of the county. So most of the counties are still feeling like they need to have their staff back in their facilities. But I do think it's worth addressing in this master plan as we move forward and talk about the impacts working remotely or even a hybrid working remotely 3 days a week can have on the overall master plan. So that is something we'll want to address as we move forward. And again, this is brief. Our goal here is, I believe we'll be meeting and presenting to the committee or the county board at least a couple of times, is what we've talked about, to give updates as we move forward with this master plan. I think it's important to get your guys' feedback on this. There will be a fair amount of meetings with the other committees. When we do the space needs assessment, we will be meeting with departments. We take it to that level of meeting with the departments, understanding their space needs. So it's a very collaborative effort as we go through this. We do believe at this point, from a schedule standpoint, this is about a 6-month process for us to go from where we're at today to coming back with a final report. And I think that's all we have for today, unless you have anything else
great.
to add to that?
Great.
Okay.
No, that was very excellent. We are looking at the COVID and the impact on the workforce and working from home. We're looking at that. We are looking at security. That's a very big one. And we're looking at the PAC. It's an older building and how we prepare for the future. So I'm very pleased with it. We have 2 resolutions in front of you. One is approving the updated county campus master plan. And the second is allowing a general fund transfer of $125,000.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could someone touch on if the Samaritan Center is going to be a part of this plan, since we're still working through what we're doing with the Samaritan Center?
I would, yes. No, that's not part of the plan. We are going ahead. In fact, next month, we will be back here talking and presenting about the future of Samaritan.
Okay, so that's a different discussion than
Yes.
if that would stay or move north of 33 or whatever comes of it.
Yes, and I will just note, Supervisor, that in every scenario of planning, that facility, the 1964 facility won't exist after whatever decision it is you make. So either we'll build new somewhere else altogether, or that building will come down and we'll be out of the business. There's no scenario where we go back to that footprint.
Okay, I know it's a separate, but it's a very closely linked discussion with us. One other quick question is, do you examine the highway operations out of the Slinger location just for accounting?
Yes,
Our
we
needs
will.
with that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and see no other questions. Vote on this electronically. Yeah, you're voting on resolution 41. Motion passes unanimously. Yep. Oh, hold on. Somebody waiting for 2. Make sure you're in. Coming? Got him? All right, motion passes unanimously then. Still waiting for 1?
No, 1 no.
Oh, 1 no. I'm sorry. 2021 Resolution 42 General Fund Transfer for the Washington County Master Plan, Campus Master Plan. This will be a 2/3 vote. I'll take a motion. Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Krebs. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we can vote on this electronically. one abstention. Motion passes. Thanks for waiting, Laura. You're up.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us back. I'm Laura Catherine. I'm the Director of the Workforce Development Board for Waukesha, Ozaki, and Washington counties. Joining me tonight is Beth Norris, the Operations Coordinator for the One Stop System. Beth has another commitment shortly after 7, so we're going to move through fairly quickly, but happy to go back if we gloss over anything, and definitely happy to answer questions at the end. I'm going to share my screen so you can see some of the slides that we have for you tonight. I believe you also have a copy of this in your board packet as well. So I like to start with the second slide. Some of you have seen this many, many times by now, but for those that are newer, workforce boards were created by federal legislation, and we are one of 11 in Wisconsin. So as I mentioned, representing the 3 counties, Waukesha, Ozaki, and Washington. We work in collaboration with local elected officials. So in Washington County, that's certainly working with the county executive as well as Chairman Crayfall and Supervisor Dice. So we have very close relationships in all 3 counties, and there is a lot of coordination amongst the 3 counties themselves. In addition, we work with economic development. Again, in Washington County, that would be EDWC. I also serve as the board president of EDWC, which makes a very strong working relationship. We work with our education partners. President Bearwald from Moraine Park is on our board, and we also work closely with Pete Rettler at the West Bend campus. And then certainly with the business community. Our board chair is Dawn Schicker from Continuum HR in West Bend. So the board itself is looking at those immediate workforce needs, like getting people that are unemployed into jobs, but also some of those long-term needs. So we're looking out into the future to see where the demand is going to be and where we need to focus some of our investment and training dollars so we can have a prepared workforce for the jobs of the future. So our programs and services are largely the same as you saw from the last year. We work with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding. This is federal funding that's designed to serve adults, dislocated workers, youth, and the Rapid Response Program, which serves both job seekers and businesses that are going through a mass layoff or a business closure. We also have the Windows to Work program. This is with the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, and we work with the county jail and Huber facilities to assist individuals that are transitioning back into society. So we assist with helping them to become reemployed. On the business side, we help businesses with really all things hiring. So it could be something as a wage comparison if they're trying to understand if the new job that they're posting is competitive in the marketplace, to help to connect them to workers that are coming out of education programs and training programs. We also provide some funding assistance if there are individuals that are going through internships or on the job training, that we can offset some of those costs. And then one of our newer programs that's new in the last few years is our incumbent worker training program that allows us to work with individuals that are currently employed at businesses but need additional training to maintain their competitiveness in the field, and it helps the businesses to retain their workforce, which is something that we all know is really critical these days. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. I just want to note that the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act has a set of federal performance metrics that all workforce boards are held to. So in the WOW area, I'm happy to say since we've been under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, we have met or exceeded all of our performance metrics. And so these are things like our unemployment rates, earnings for individuals that have gone through our programs, credential attainment and skills gain. So we have some really strong service provider partners and employer partners that allow us to perform at such a high level. This is a snapshot of some data from the last program year. As you know, we certainly saw some impacts from the pandemic in the last program year that affected some of the foot traffic in our centers. Beth will talk about that when she gets to her portion. But we had 259 individuals that enrolled in our programs that went through some kind of employment or training service. It was a pretty good mix of individuals on the male and female gender split. We had a pretty significant age range from individuals that were 16 years old all the way up through those that are maybe on their last segment of their career. Our average hourly wages, we've seen those slightly tick up over the last few years. So for an adult going through our program and getting placed into a job, their average wage upon placement was $18.10 per hour. Dislocated workers was a little bit higher at over $24 an hour. In youth, it was at over $14 an hour. As I mentioned, the incumbent worker training program has really gained in popularity in the last few years. Last year, we saw 12 businesses take part in this program with 43 workers going through some type of training in their specific field. This is something that we've seen slowly increase over time, and we expect that to continue into the future, as we know there is a very tight labor market and employers are really wanting to hang on to the workforce that they have. Our workforce board went through strategic planning last year. We are currently in the middle of our second year. And so the 4 things that we're focusing on, I want to just touch on some of the highlights over the last year and a half. One thing that we noticed when we looked at the landscape of workforce development, there are so many entities and agencies that are engaged in workforce development, which is fantastic, but it can also make it difficult to navigate who to go to when you need a service if you're a job seeker or an employer. So we've done a number of things over the years to assist in that, but one thing we were really strategic in this last year was having our board map all of the various stakeholders that work in workforce development, from nonprofits to government entities to chambers of commerce. And we built an engagement plan. So we'll be working very strategically to bring those groups together so we can tackle these problems in a comprehensive and coordinated way. We also wanted to look at how we could expand our organizational capacity to increase our impact. Up until this year, we had seen a slow decline in the federal funding that the workforce boards receive. And this was the case across Wisconsin. However, we did get an increase this year for the first time in a number of years. We've also applied for some additional grants so we can expand that service footprint. So we have some additional funding to serve individuals that were laid off due to the pandemic. And we also have some other applications that are out there that we're waiting to hear if we will receive those awards. The third item is that we're really going to focus on creating a clear message of who the Workforce Development Board is. So workforce boards are often misunderstood in terms of the scope of what they do, who they represent. We're often confused as being the Department of Workforce Development. So the board is forming an ad hoc work group, and we're going to have a comprehensive communications strategy to look at our brand and make sure that we're messaging ourselves appropriately in the community so individuals know how to work with us, how to find us, and just so we're easier to access. And then the last item was increasing our self-service access to demand-driven resources. So one thing that we noted going into 2020, so prior to the pandemic, was our customers were wanting to access services sometimes on their own time. So not always between the 8 to 4:30 hours that our centers were open. So we were already starting to think about how could we become more accessible during those non-traditional hours. The pandemic really accelerated this, and we were able to shift a lot of our services to be available in a virtual or a hybrid format. So while things have started to return to a more normal state, we still have some of these offerings available so we can offer both to best meet the needs of our customers. So now that we've been able to do that, we are looking at how we can evaluate the effectiveness of those virtual services to make sure that we're hitting the mark. And if we need to adjust services, we're looking at ways we can do that as well. Now I want to just give a very brief update on how the labor market has changed since you saw us a year ago. As you know, the unemployment rate is drastically different than it was 12 months ago. Currently, the data that we have is through July of 2021. Washington County sits at 3.3%. So that is almost where we were prior to the pandemic. And most economists agree that somewhere between 4 and 5% is considered full employment. So Washington County's economy, as I'm sure many of you in the room are well aware, is very strong. This is a little snapshot of Washington County's labor force. So if you look at the fourth column, which is the change from the previous month, you can see all of the indicators are continuing to trend in the right direction. So the labor force in the county is starting to tick up. The number of employed individuals is starting to tick up. Unemployed is ticking down. So all of the indicators are right where we'd want to see them. And then the chart on the right-hand side shows the trend of unemployment rate over the last 2.5 years. So the orange line is where we're at in 2021. You can see for July, we're almost right where we were in 2019. So getting back to that really strong economy and low unemployment that we had prior to the pandemic. The state of Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development puts out what they call their top 10 hot jobs in workforce development areas. So this is a combination of annual separations from individuals that are either retiring or perhaps leaving to stay in the field or transfer to another employer, or new job creation. So we've seen a lot of these occupations pop up in the WDA or the workforce development area year after year, but we have seen some movement. So sales reps has been one of the top hot jobs in the area with about 1,000 annual openings in our 3-county area each year. But we have seen a bit of an uptick in registered nurses, operations managers, carpenters, and electricians. So things that we know we will as a workforce board be focusing on, making sure we have individuals going into training programs in those fields as we move forward. Along with those are the median wages that go along with those hot jobs. We've seen the wages, again, slowly uptick over the last couple of years, not in a significant way compared to last year, but we have seen some movement in wages. Certainly, we're reading about that on the national level as we're seeing some pressure on employers with the very tight labor market. So I know that was very brief, but I want to get to Beth because we're coming up on 7 o'clock here. So Beth, take it away.
Okay, well, thanks. You don't have to go that quick because of me. There's nowhere on earth I'd rather be than the Washington County Board meeting tonight. So thanks for having us. My role is to tell you a little bit on the operational level, what's going on at the American Job Center. The American Job Center in Washington County is located on the Marine Park Technical College campus at 2200 Green Tree. That being said, what you heard from Laura and what you heard last year is that really a lot of the American Job Center network is being accessed virtually through our local website, which is wfdc.org, and increasingly the jobcenterwisconsin.com, which is the state of Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development's website. So I affectionately refer to it as the public workforce system because our brand changes every couple of years. But the required brand under Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act is the American Job Center Network. And this is recapping what Laura said, but we serve individuals and we serve employers. And when we look at the individuals, we are often breaking them down in different categories like young people, the general public, people who've been laid off, veterans, et cetera, et cetera. And when we talk about the employer customer, we are talking about all the employers, but then we are sometimes breaking them down and looking at specific sectors which are strong or important to our economy, like manufacturing, healthcare, technology, financial. Next slide. So the public workforce system, although there was an era where we tried to present ourselves as just one entity that no one needed to know who was behind the curtain, we've increasingly got away from that. So who is behind the curtain of the public workforce system is numerous entities. And you'll see that I have located at MPTC West Bend, Equus Workforce Solutions. They used to have another name. Forward Careers, Inc. They used to have another name. State of Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, which sounds like a singular entity, but they have multiple departments, including job service, veterans, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and Apprenticeship. And then you see there's a little line there because they're not necessarily in our door, but they're very close, in close proximity, where we have the rest of Marine Park Technical College activities and the economic development of Washington County. And then additionally, we have numerous partners that aren't located in physical space or in close proximity. And these include our library system, an entity that serves Native populations, an entity that serves people that are 55 plus, Department of Corrections, you, and the Unemployment Insurance Department. So those are providers. And then Laura also said these services. So in some ways I'm reinforcing it with just different words so that you really nail it in. But the services that we provide include things like job search, labor acquisition for employers, hitting those labor pools, career help, training, incentives, work-based learning, which is hotly in trend, supportive type services that are necessary for people to get and keep jobs, computer and remote tools, which is on the rise, pathways, which allow people to come in at one place and then progress gradually through different jobs at higher wage and higher credentials, strong connection to adult basic ed and English language literacy, financial literacy, and customized training. And then what we've heard a lot about, and you'll see in the next slide, is also very relevant today. And we talked about last year, things like job fairs and recruitment events. So those are in general the services. So our system, when we talked to you a year ago, it was shut down temporarily. And that temporarily turned into be 14 months where we basically were serving people entirely remotely. As of June of 2021, we started opening the doors for the general public to start walking into locations where they can access services.
It made it difficult to survey folks to find out how they were feeling about the services that they received. But we were, through Department of Workforce Development and the time we were open, able to conduct a survey. I just want to note that this survey was conducted on a 7-county regional basis as part of our partnership with the other 2 workforce development areas adjacent to the WOW area. And the survey was administered through an e-blast by Department of Workforce Development to everybody registered in the system, along with being provided by people that were working with folks in the different programs that we've talked about and or who visited centers. We had 700 responses and 100 of those were employers. And the thing to note on this slide that I'm showing you is a couple things. One is that for every service that we have for an employer, there's also a similar one for the job seeker, because that's what we do. We facilitate the connection of services. So if it's internship, that's something an employer and a job seeker would participate in. And when you look down the services that were being used, not surprisingly, the one that got the most traction were those in the website and online tools, so that we're seeing both employers and individuals have significantly ramped up their access to virtual services. The strongest one being Job Center of Wisconsin. That was the website I pointed to on the first slide. That's also not surprising. 1, because they helped us to administer the survey, and 2, because all the employers register on there through the unemployment insurance system, and everybody who receives unemployment insurance uses that system to find jobs. That being said, you can also see that people are educating themselves through labor market information, wage data, job market information on both sides of the equation, and that job fairs and recruitment events have been really in play given the labor market transition, people losing their jobs, employers desperately needing jobs. And then lastly, you'll see that 1 in 5 people that took the survey indicated that they had visited a physical location. And coincidentally, we had in the first month since we reopened about 100 people that visited the West Bend location. And that would be about a 1/5 of what we would have seen pre-pandemic, which would have been around 500 plus visiting the physical location. So that's what we know from the some intel we have on our customer base. And then that's going to take me to my last slide, which is, this is again reinforcing the things that Laura has said, and I think that we have been saying in our previous presentations in recent years. But so as the system continues to transform, these are the trends that we are seeing. Physical location-based services combined with virtual and remote. We're curious to see how close we get to pre-pandemic levels, but we are thinking a lot of people got comfortable with technology over the last year and several months. So we're not sure if that's going to decrease the number of people that rely on physical people-to-people services, but we know for sure it won't eliminate it. So all of the service providers are looking at hybrid delivery. And quite frankly, we take a lot of information that we learned from our technical college system because the educators are on the forefront. The trends are that a lot of the activities that we're doing are informed by the labor shortage. And interestingly, between when I put these slides together and now, an article came out in the Wall Street Journal on September 4th. And they have they cite some research by Harvard on, they refer to it as the hidden workforce. And they use the same categories where they're looking at what employers nationally are doing to fill job openings, as we talk about when we talk about those specialty programs such as older people, veterans, people with disabilities. So a lot of those programs, apprenticeship, are informing what you're seeing in the public workforce system and will continue. That's work-based strategies, number 3. Finally, integrated learning pathways, again, contextual-based learning, and also things that allow for a continuum of people within, and we've heard this term for many years, lifelong learning, but that whole concept of people needing to reskill, recredential, and continue throughout their working life. And then last but not least, industry sector strategies, which is also alluded to, those being in areas that we know we have strong growth or strong demand, like manufacturing and healthcare as 2 examples. So those are our trends, and I am going to hop off and leave it to Laura to answer the questions, but thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you at the center in West Bend, around Washington County, and again next year.
I'll stop sharing. I'm happy to take any questions. I would also just like to offer Washington County has been a longtime partner of the Workforce Board and advocate for the work that we do and of the one-stop system. So we are always grateful for that support and certainly don't take it for granted. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Supervisor Galt.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to, I think it's slide 5 of 18, the program 2021 data, specifically incumbent worker training. Just curious, how much of that was, you made a reference of needing to upskill or retool. How much of that worker training was that, or was it meeting basic qualifications, say for a new hire?
So in incumbent worker training, it is upskilling. Sometimes it's an employer that has to purchase a new piece of equipment or technology for their business to stay competitive, and no one on the floor perhaps knows how to operate it. So incumbent worker training is only eligible for upskilling purposes. So we see a variety of uses, but it certainly is above those minimum requirements.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Well, Laura, I'd like to thank you and your team for the work that you guys do. It's exemplary. You're constantly above average, way above average, and it's really appreciated. And hopefully some of the new initiatives that we're looking at here in Washington County can make you guys even more busy. So
Thank you, Chairman.
thanks for what you guys do.
Have a great evening.
All right, have a great one. Bye-bye. Okay, that brings us to Judge Martins. Thank you for waiting patiently. I didn't see you fidget all that much. Turn you on here.
It's amazing to see all the issues you folks address on a given night. So I'll be respectful of your time. It's really good to see all of you. It's been a while since I've seen many of you, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come here tonight and update you on the 3 criminal justice diversion programs that we're running in the circuit court. To those of you who are newer to the board, I'm Todd Martins. I'm a circuit court judge in branch 3. I've been in the courthouse for 30 years now, and it really looked different when I started than it does right now. And we've got a really wonderful courthouse to work in, and I appreciate that. But I started out as an assistant DA in the Washington County DA's office in 1991. I became the DA in 1999, and I was elected to that office 5 times. I became a judge in 2010, and I've been elected twice since then. My wife and I have lived in Germantown for almost 28 years, and my folks lived in Richfield for almost 30 years before they moved to the River Shores condos here, just a couple blocks from here, back in 2014. They were with Richfield when it was a town, and then during the transition to when it became a village. In any event, I'll be respectful of your time because I know you've got a lot to discuss tonight and a lot to listen to and talk about. But Washington County has 3 diversion programs: an operating while intoxicated treatment alternatives diversion program, a TAD program. I'll use that shortcut. An OWI TAD program. We have an opiate TAD program, and we have a drug treatment court, which started about 18 months ago as a pilot, but which is now pretty much at full capacity. It turned into a full-fledged program really, really quickly. And these days, heroin gets all the attention, but operating while intoxicated is still a significant threat to our public safety. If you look at the statistics, 1/3 of all traffic fatalities in Wisconsin involve impaired drivers. So OWI is still something we are very concerned about. So in our OWI TAD program, eligible offenders plead guilty, but they have their sentencing date delayed so that they can participate. Now, participants have to complete treatment, maintain sobriety, pass alcohol screens, and basically stay out of trouble. And if they do, they get a lower sentence recommendation than if they would have otherwise gotten it. And we felt that the program was effective, but we wanted to find out for sure. So we have been partnering with the UW Milwaukee at Washington County for a number of years, and they studied the effectiveness of our program and found that OWI TAD participants were 80% less likely to reoffend than comparable non-TAD participants. So our OWI TAD program works. It reduces jail stays, it saves taxpayers money, it keeps our streets safer, and it gets participants access to the treatment that they need. The opiate TAD program and the treatment court programs respond to the opiate crisis that is in our county and nationwide. When you look back in 1999, when I became DA, well, I had a full head of hair, and Washington County had no opiate problem, but it does now. Both of those things, unfortunately, have changed. In my first 3 years as DA, we didn't have one heroin possession case, not one. And in 2020 alone, by contrast, we had almost 200 criminal charges for possession of heroin. Nationally, over 81,000 people died of drug overdoses last year, 1,500 alone in Wisconsin last year. In 2018, Washington County had the second highest rate in Wisconsin of babies born exposed to opiates. So this is a crisis that we needed to address. So our response to the crisis is really two-pronged. First of all, we've got the opioid or opiate TAD program. And secondly, we've got the drug treatment court, which just started recently. The opiate TAD program is directed at lower to moderate risk drug possession offenders. These people participate in a TAD. They plead guilty to possession of drugs, and their sentencing or their case is deferred for a year. And during this time, they have to complete treatment. They have to pass many, many drug screens, and they have to follow all the rules of the TAD program. And if they do so, they get their charge dismissed. But some addicted, and this works really well for a lot of addicted people. We have over 30 people in that program right now. But some addicted individuals need more intense programming. So for those people, we have drug treatment court. Now, drug treatment court is designed to address the needs of people who are high risk to reoffend and have a high need for treatment. These are generally people who would otherwise be in the state prison system. So if you're admitted into drug treatment court for 15 to 24 months, you have to come to court very frequently. You undergo hundreds of random observed frequent drug tests. You have curfews. You have to meet with your case manager multiple times a week. You have to participate in treatment. You have to find sober supports in the community. You have to stabilize your employment and your family situation in order to graduate. And most of all, most importantly, I think, you have to meet with the treatment court judge very frequently to talk about your progress in all these areas. So if you're in treatment court, I'm in your business in a big way for a long time. So drug treatment court, as some of you know, occurs at 2:00 on Thursday in my courtroom every Thursday, and you're all welcome. It's a public hearing, and the public is welcome, and you're welcome to attend. And I'm happy to talk to you about what we're doing in greater detail, and invite you to attend anytime. So in treatment court, you're a participant, you come to court, meet with the judge, your positive progress is rewarded. And if you have negative behavior, you face sanctions, there's a variety of sanctions that we impose up to and including jail. So drug treatment court offers support and access to treatment while still holding participants accountable for their behaviors. Ultimately, the reward for successful completion of treatment court is not just that the participants avoid prison, they really get their lives back. The county executive, the county board chair, and the chairs of the Public Safety and Human Services Committee all attended the first drug treatment court graduation in July, and I really appreciated you all being there. It meant a lot, and it meant a lot to the participants too. I think that each of those folks who attended would attest that the person that they saw graduate from drug treatment court, who was a longtime heroin addict, is now sober, in recovery, and is well equipped to stay sober and build a successful drug-free life. So that's our goal here. We hope and expect to graduate many more participants. We've got a couple more graduating in late September and early October. People who get off drugs and stay off drugs get their kids back, they get jobs, they parent their kids, they restore relationships with family members that have been destroyed. They get promotions at work, they get their driver's license, they get insurance, they rent homes, they buy homes in some cases. They become fully functioning, well-adjusted, positive contributors to our society. And the taxpayers save about $40,000 a year for every participant for every year that they're not in prison. So it pays as well. Now, the county has supported our OWI and opiate TAD diversion programs over the years, and I thank you for that continuing support. You know, the courts aren't doing this alone. We have a great team of government and community partners that are all dedicated to implementing these programs and doing it right. We want to do this right. The Human Services Department, the sheriff, the district attorney who's here, the Department of Corrections, Elevate, the public defender, local treatment providers, and the UW Milwaukee at Washington County are all playing significant positive roles in making these programs work. I do want to briefly highlight a serious need in our community, though. Individuals who are in the throes of addiction frequently need access to residential treatment. And these individuals, when they finish this intensive inpatient treatment, are more likely to stay sober and have a long recovery if they are able to transition to a supportive, sober living environment rather than going back to the environment that they came from when they were using. This transition is associated with successful outcomes and longer term recovery. If they don't have this transitional housing option to support their newfound sobriety, people are more likely to go back to using drugs. That's just a fact. Washington County currently has no sober living facility for women. And there is a need for one. There's a significant need for sober living facilities for women. We've had discussions with the county executive, the Human Services Department Director, Julie Driscoll, who's here, and community members to talk about ways that we can approach this need and try to work on filling this unmet need. So I ask you as community leaders and as board supervisors to support these efforts. So diversion programs in Washington County are making a measurable difference in the lives of participants, their families, and the people of Washington County. I believe it's good for public safety. It's good for the families, and it's well worth the effort. I'm proud of what we're doing. I'm grateful for all our partners, and I'm grateful for the support of the county. And most of all, I thank you, and I'm grateful for your willingness to listen to me talk about these programs, which I believe are very important. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Martin's always a pleasure to see you. You're one of the first people that I met when I first came on the board 6 years ago. We sat together at the employee function.
We did, I remember.
And right away, I got the passion from you about what you do specifically with the drug courts and the TADS program and all the rest of that. As you are aware, we do have probably a certain amount of money coming from a settlement with the opioid lawsuit that's been out there. And we will be taking that up to decide what's the best way that our community would benefit from that money. And I very much look forward to your thoughts and ideas on where that could be best spent, because I do believe that you work probably more closely with the people, and I know you have a lot of experience and you can see somebody who would benefit versus somebody who probably won't. So I look forward to that, and I totally do agree with you about the women's shelter for offenders. I think that is something that we need to seriously look at. So more a statement than a question, but I just wanted you to know that I really support what you do, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the things that, the ideas that you have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Supervisor Dice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the privilege of attending that first graduation, as you are well aware and as you stated in your comments. And I was very impressed with the young lady that graduated that day, and with her father's comments as well. My heart went out to that family because it affects so many people, for anyone who's struggling with addiction. And I do want to applaud you for spearheading these programs, because I know how important it's been to so many in this community. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I know the other judges support you in this effort as well. So good job, Todd. Keep it up.
Thanks, Chris.
Your Honor, out of that 30 people you were talking about, does it fluctuate, either fall out, we're getting hooked again or whatever, but is it a small percentage?
Great question. You know, these programs cost money and we don't want to ask for money if our programs aren't working. So that's why we're partnering with UW to test the effectiveness of these programs. And our guy at UW is studying the opiatad program, and he's studying the drug treatment court program. And it's too early to tell statistically on the drug treatment court, but the early statistics are showing that there is a benefit to participation in drug treatment court. You know, these are people who suffer from very serious addictions, and it is a very volatile population. A lot of them, I'm pretty certain that everybody who's in either of those programs has had a close friend die of an overdose. They've almost all overdosed themselves, and through the magic of Narcan are still alive. So anecdotally, I will say, I believe this works, but we're waiting on the statistics.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you very much for your
And,
time.
I echo Supervisor Dice and Supervisor Kelling. Your work in this and your dedication is beyond measure. I mean, you took this on. You could have just thrown everybody in jail. It's the easy. Yeah, that would have been
I've
the
done that
easy
for
way.
30 years.
That would have been the easy way. Yeah. So, but having these people and making them constructive members of society again is something pretty special. And thank you for that.
I appreciate that. I don't want anybody to just throw me a parade. I'm just doing my job, and there's a whole lot of people working hard to make this happen. I appreciate your comments though. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, next order of business, consent agenda. Supervisor Smisek, Supervisor Schleif, any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to consideration upon request reading of resolutions, 2021 Resolution 36, authorization to transfer prosecution of children in need of protective services, CHIPS cases from the district attorney's office to the county attorney's office. Your motion, Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Dice. Any questions? Any discussion? Supervisor Schleif.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, the workload can be handled.
Yes, in part, what makes this possible is that the Human Services Department and the County Attorney's Office, who for years have been working together to bring guardianship cases before the county, have revamped that particular caseload such that the numbers have decreased substantially in that caseload. Whereas before, we were filing guardianships for nearly everybody who came into the county who wanted one or needed one, without getting into too much detail on elements and what that all involves. Now we're really focusing on who statutorily qualifies for the county to file a guardianship. And for example, we've gone from, I think last year, filing 61 cases down to just 16 so far this year. So by reevaluating what we do and how we do it, it makes room for this caseload to be able to transfer up to my office comfortably. And we do believe we have the ability and the staff to do it. And after meeting with District Attorney Benson, our staffs have been spending some time together. We are very confident that we can take this on and do very well.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gals.
Thank you, Chair. So just trying to understand the FTE transfer. So is that a plan transfer from, one budget to another? And there was a comment about retirement and child support agencies. So is that a position elimination then after the retirement?
Yes, we've had, what's happening is we have a 0.65 FTE in the county attorney's office who'll become a 1.0. And that's funded in part by some retirements in the child support agency, the positions we aren't filling and have revamped over there as well. So we're making use of the resources that we have, and we've been able to cover it with essentially existing budget dollars.
So essentially a savings to the county because we're eliminating a 0.4 something or 0.6 something, whatever the math, can't think about it right now.
Yeah, that, I know what you're trying to say. And I agree.
Yeah, and I think it also streamlines the process for the parents and the kids that are involved. So. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we can vote on this electronically. Rolling. What's that? Okay, motion passes unanimously. 2021 Resolution 37 Grant Application, United States Environmental Protection Agency. Fiscal year 2022 Community-Wide Coalition Assessment Grant for Hazardous Substance and Petroleum Brownfields. Entertain a motion. Supervisor Gallots, Supervisor Markwart. I'd like to make an amendment to that. I'll have the clerk read the amendment. Turn you on here. You're on.
So this amendment was submitted by Deb Silsky. There was a change at the EPA with the coalition part of the funding for the grant. So the amendment would be changing the amount on page 1, line 17 to $500,000 and removing the word coalition in 5 places on page 1, lines 9 and 16, on page 2, lines 7 and 39, and on page 3, line 8.
Okay, does everybody have that? Entertain a second to that. Second by Supervisor Kelling. I made the motion. Yeah, Kelling second. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Krieger. Gundrum.
I bumped that by mistake.
Oh, sorry. Disregard. Supervisor Mahalik.
This is being represented to us then as a housekeeping maneuver, correct? So we can pretty much not have to worry as regards to any deep-seated meaning on what we're doing. This is something that really needs to be done, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll vote on the amendment first. And we'll vote electronically. Unanimous. Oh, waiting for, is Pam back on? Pam, if you're Supervisor Conrath, could you text your vote in?
Yes, I did text my vote in already.
Okay, thank you. It didn't come through.
I approve.
Okay. A motion passes unanimously. Now we'll vote on the amended resolution 37. Ready? One more. Everybody check, make sure you're in. Okay. We good? Motion passes unanimously. 2020 Resolution 38, resolution authorizing the application of an airport public facilities permit and appoint Builders Freeze Lake Pub as concessionaire at Glacier Hills Park, Village of Richfield, and Washington County. Need a motion. Supervisor Schulte, Supervisor Mary. Does everybody understand this one? Any questions? Jamie, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Essentially, what this resolution does is it authorizes the county parks to use the shelter. If you're familiar with Glacier Hills County Park, up the hill, it's shelter 3, kind of by the volleyball courts, as a public facility, which then allows builders in this case to apply for a permit from DOR to utilize that portion of the property for the sale of alcohol. So this is a way to permit the types of events that we had historically held out there couple years back with builders in the relationship that we had previously had. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about that.
Any questions?
Jamie, as I recall, a couple of years ago, we had some on and off again with builders, and no fault of their own. I'm not casting any dispersion on them or anything. Was that was that kind of what this is addressing?
Yes, so brewers have specific licensing from the state of Wisconsin, which allows a traveling location essentially. Pubs are not licensed the same way under state alcohol laws. So previously they had gotten an amendment to their liquor license from the Village of Richfield. And later DOR kind of outlined a different approach for how they would need to secure a liquor license for those types of events.
So now basically we're covering all of our bases and we'll be able to have builders in there and they'll have a nice party and we're all legal and good.
Well, builders still needs to apply for the license through Department of Revenue following kind of the authorization. And then we subsequently will work with the county attorney to set up a contract with them as the concessionaire out there.
Okay, thank you.
See no other questions. We can vote on this electronically. Motion passes unanimously. 2021 Resolution 39, support for 2021 Senate Bill 463 and 2021 Assembly Bill 488. Supervisor Bossert. Supervisor Hartwig. Supervisor Dice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Executive Committee first took this resolution up, we were looking at two different bills.
You speak into the microphone.
I am. It's
Oh,
right in
okay.
front of me.
Okay.
The two Senate bills we initially addressed were 409 and 413. At Executive, I took issue with it because I did not feel that it was the county's place or our role to be putting forth such a resolution. This amended resolution was then given to us right at that meeting. And it addressed two different bills then, 463 and 488. I did, along with the rest of the committee, approve it so it would come before the county board. Now, I've had time to look at these two bills. I've read them. I hope everyone else has as well. And let me start by saying I don't disagree with anything said in this resolution. The wording in here is fine. I have no objection to that. But I still do not feel that it is the county board's role to take a position on this and support this kind of a resolution. This one deals basically with transparency. I think we as a county are very transparent. There's always room for improvement, but it's something that we look at and that we deal with on a daily basis. So I think we're good at that. So for that reason alone, I'm going to be voting no for passing this resolution. So thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gauss.
Thank you, Chair. I would have to agree with Supervisor Dice on some of the comments. I don't disagree with the general overall resolution. What I do disagree with is page 2, line 15, 16. Be it further resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors supports the passage of said bills. And the reason for that is the irony in this is that we believe in local control. So shouldn't local control sit with our elected officials and our school boards to decide how and what is posted on their websites? So that's where I have a struggle with. I had no issues with supporting the other notions about critical race theory and so on, but to me, it's government overreach. It's the state coming into local and dictating, what I think is a tactical piece on transparency on a website, for example, which are some of the things that are called out in there. So that's what I struggle with.
Thank you. Supervisor Bossert.
I will be voting in support of this. I think it's important to realize that what these legislative pieces do is empower parents to know and to work with their school board on what their kids are being taught. Because right now, parents are in the dark where they have to work really hard to find out what their kids are being taught. Was at a meeting a month ago where several parents groups presented. One of those groups was able to find some of the curriculum and dig down into it. One of the curriculum pieces stated as an overarching goal that the goal of their curriculum, one of their goals, was to fundamentally change the relationship between children and their parents. Now, schools have absolutely no business being involved in the relationship between children and their parents, with the clear exception of when there's a specific incident of abuse. Certainly, it should not be a curriculum goal. I myself, a year and a half ago, was directed to a curriculum piece for a math curriculum, ironically, where one of their stated goals was to break down the nuclear family. That was a stated curriculum goal. And parents right now, they're having trouble finding out these things because of the lack of transparency. These legislative pieces create that transparency so parents can find these things out. So I'm encouraging everybody to vote for this and to basically empower parents to be advocates for their children in the public schools. Thank you.
Supervisor Marquardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start out with a friendly amendment to correct the spelling of the word principal in both line 12 and 13 on page 2. Should be LE. Since we're talking about education, I'm a little bit of a stickler for these things. And then I would also speak in support of this. I had a similar thought as my fellow supervisors about whether it was appropriate for the county board to weigh in on this, but I believe it is a completely an issue of transparency in government, and as a slightly higher level of government than the school board sitting around our county, and also just in general in our state, I believe that this is a fundamental need that school boards should not be trying to hide this, and they are from parents. What their curriculum choices are. I mean, they have, subcommittee meetings at, odd hours of the day or week where these things are proposed. Oftentimes, school boards don't even act on them in their public meetings. And I think this is a good step that highlights the problem and also supports, again, transparency in government, just like our state sunshine laws that are often ignored by administrative departments as well, where you have to scrap and claw to try and get information out of some agencies through freedom of information requests, and it should just not be this hard. So I think this is a good step, and I see no problem with this body weighing in on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Krieger Gundrum.
Interestingly, I kind of agree with Chris on our Supervisor Dice about whether or not the county should be taking this up. It certainly does belong in the purview of the state assembly and the state senate to regulate school boards. But I think a lot of this is talking about our freedoms that are granted to us in our Constitution. We certainly don't want to have socialism and Marxism being taught to our students, K-12, in the universities and even within the government. One of the things this does not do is there are 3 bills that do definitely address those issues. It's not in this resolution. I wish that it was, because that is what is giving the parents power. The transparency part of it on the curriculum, they can see the curriculum, but as some of us have learned, I've been working with the Slinger group, a parent group, and a West Bend parent group. Even though the curriculum says what it is, they still need to go and look at the lesson plans. And believe me, it's taking them a long time to figure out if CRT, critical race theory, or now it's been moved into the SEL, social emotional learning, which is, who would expect that it would be in there? But they're finding that it is there. I'll support this and I'll vote for it because it's, I think that it is part of the county to let our state assembly know that we agree with them on this. I don't think it's directing the school board what to do. And that's the one place that I disagree with you on it. I have a lot of stuff I would like to say about this, but I'll leave it at that. I think this is a pretty good resolution, but it could go a lot further in helping parents actually have the power to do something about it, which is not included in this resolution. And those 3 other assembly versions, Senate versions did do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I look at this resolution, it comes to my mind that we are elected leaders of our districts. We all know that a lot of times our people aren't always abreast of what's always going on in government, local government. I would venture to say most people in your district can't even name you. Okay. So it does fall on us to petition our assembly. We do it all the time, and the Senate. We do it all the time for various different topics. And I can't think of a more important topic than our children. I think this is a very measured resolution. It's not asking to ban anything in particularly or directing the schools to do things particularly other than make it transparent. Where else do we see transparency? Well, we see it right here in this room. All of our agendas are posted online. Everything that we're going to talk about tonight, maps and background information, it's all there that the public can go right online and they can take a look at it. So basically, we're saying that the schools should have this too, so parents can make this informed choice. I had those same parent groups that Supervisor Gundrum, I've spoken with them and I'm part of them. And I've always believed that the information is more important than us trying to ban or taking power into our hands. I think it's more important to make sure that they have the information so that they can use that to make grassroots decisions. The only way you defeat this is to make a strong parent group that can petition the school board and say, look, you do what we want, or we get you out of there. We are in charge, and it's about time that the voters take back charge of the schools with what's going on here. So transparency is the first step. Involvement will be the second. I totally agree with this resolution. I think it's an excellent place to start. It does empower parents to get involved with their kids. It does not overstep our authority. And I do believe that we, as community leaders, have the responsibility to petition our state senators and our state assemblymen to make good legislation on our behalf. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I also agree. We're in positions of leadership. We're in positions of making Washington County the best place to live and work and play, and we are right now. We are to advocate on behalf of our citizens, the people we represent. If we fail to represent them and to support legislation that gives them the tools to hold their school districts accountable and to make sure their children are taught appropriately, we fail. I'm going to vote. I vote yes on this, and I ask everyone to make this a unanimous statement that we are protecting our children, we are advocating for our parents, and we are going to support them and make school districts be open, honest, and transparent, just as all governments are open, honest, and transparent. Supervisor Conrath?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Creefall. I reflect what you shared, and Supervisor Kellen and Gundrum. I am one of the parents in the Slinger School District. I am a member of the Slinger Parents United group that is digging through the Slinger curriculum. We are very blessed in the Slinger School District. Our partnership with the board and the curriculum committee, but it is still a struggle. And it is surprisingly that we are finding CRT. And I don't think people realize that it's there, that it's been woven through our curriculum for decades. I just recently reviewed a textbook where I had that textbook from the primary offer back in the 80s. It's like, oh my goodness, a light bulb went on where that's probably where I got those views from way back when, because my parents never shared theirs with me. That was just something they kept to themselves. And it's like, oh, that was fed to me way back in the 80s. And I really don't think people are aware of this. Or even, the teachers themselves, they don't realize how some principles are threaded through. And that is a tactic. I have my master's in nursing education. That's my first master's, where that verbiage thread certain things through the curriculum. They might not be spelled out bullet point for bullet point in a syllabi, but it is woven into the teachings, the reading selections, and the textbooks that are chosen. But I would like to reiterate again, Slinger School District, we are blessed their partnership with us. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and this helps empower the parents, like you all have stated, and helps the just the community as a whole and the students. Like my daughter was initially very concerned about this. She's like, oh, you're not gonna, get one of her favorite teachers fired or something. It's like, no, that's not what this is about. It's, we're exploring, we're partnering together and bringing in awareness. And if, things are found, well, then let's make some changes. But we should all be aware what our children are taught. And, schools need to stick to history and facts, and parents need to parent. And that's what schools want. They've been begging that for years, that parents should parent. Well, you know what? We're stepping up now and being engaged and involved. And that's what part of makes Slinger School District so excellent, is engaged parents. But so yes, I will be voting yes for this. And not only because of my own beliefs, but because of the over 30 emails that I have received requested to vote yes for this by my constituents.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, we'll can vote on this electronically. Yes, ready? Eighteen yes, 3 no's, 1 abstention. Motion passes. Resolution 40, resolution adopting the strategy set forth in the comprehensive economic development strategy SEDS for southeastern Wisconsin 21 to 25. Take a motion. Supervisor Dice, Supervisor Schleif. Supervisor Bossert.
So we amended this at executive committee. Has everybody been given a copy of the amended? It might.
Yeah, it's on their desk. Everyone
Is it?
has one.
Okay, good, good. I like the approach of the amended document. I think it was in very poor taste of Milwaukee County and the city of Milwaukee to sprinkle so much politics into what should have been an object for regional cooperation. And I think the message we're sending to Milwaukee is if you want regional cooperation, don't put stuff in there that you know is controversial and is going to create animosity and is not relevant to the document being put forward, which in this case is the economic development plan. Thank you.
One quick question for Kevin. Now, the document, the one that was sent back for revision, that was due to federal? Or was
Sure,
it?
yeah. So there was a draft put out for public comment during the public comment period. There was public comment received that resulted in some of the changes, but also that is when the Economic Development Administration, which I believe is what you're referring to, Chairman, the federal division of the Department of Commerce, made changes to the priorities that the Economic Development Administration is going to follow, and those priorities are reflected in the document.
Yeah, and most of those priorities are the ones that we discussed at great length.
Yeah, their number one priority is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, whereas, this is a Milwaukee centric document, it was more of the feds that muddied the waters, so to speak, in this document. So I think we've done a reasonable job of trying to correct those in our resolution. Supervisor Mary.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. At the previous discussions of this particular document at the executive level, I had a number of comments to make, most of which were not favorable. However, I think in what you've done here tonight with the cooperation of those who are involved, I think you've gotten around to where we want to be. I would support this, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Chairman Creefall. I wish that everybody would have a chance to look up Supervisor Carol Mary's comments at executive. He did a phenomenal job dissecting the poison that was injected into what was the original SES document. And what I would encourage SURPAC to do is to make sure that the resolution that we are passing today, and I will support it with these changes, it makes sure that a copy goes to every county supervisor in the M7.
Okay.
I would really like to see that happen. I think they need to see where Washington County stands, and I would love them to read that and embrace, basically expunging the crapola that was introduced into the original document. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kruger Gundrum.
Well, I'm going to be voting no for this because I think what you drafted in the executive committee is fine, but I don't think it will really send the message that we're wanting to send if we vote for this CED. My opinion is if we really want to send a message, we send a no. And that's all I want to say about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments. I'm sorry, Supervisor Conrad, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I just have a clarification. Since I'm not physically there, is there additional amendments besides what we have received electronically that are in front of
Yes.
people physically at the meeting? Okay,
Yes.
then I will need to abstain.
Okay. Would it be appropriate to read the resolution? Do you want me to do it or? I can read if you like, Supervisor Conrad, I can read the changes on the resolution for you. If that's acceptable.
Sure, I'll try that. Thank you.
Sure. This is a resolution acknowledging the strategy set forth in the comprehensive economic development strategy says for southeastern Wisconsin 21-25. It begins on 31 where there's changes.
Okay.
Whereas the Board of Directors of Economic Development, Washington County supports the 2021-2025 SEDS and adoption of its planning priorities, but has expressed concerns regarding elements of the SEDS that are unrelated to executing on its economic development priorities. And whereas the Washington County Board of Supervisors repudiates the politicization of the SEDS insofar as it risks creating unintended consequences, such as negatively disrupting consensus around otherwise shared values, losing important planning outcomes in the political noise, creating the perception of the loss of local control, and transforming a regionally cohesive strategy into a politically purposed instrument. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the Washington County Board of Supervisors, this board accepts the value of a regional strategic framework and shall implement those strategies that advance Washington County's goal of encouraging economic growth and vitality and that align with the county's comprehensive plan. Be it further resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors supports the formation of an economic development district for the southeastern Wisconsin region, which would align local, county, and regional economic development efforts. Be it further resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors rejects the political elements within the SEDS document and recommends that M7 and SURPAC remove such elements because they are not pertinent to economic development. So those are the amended document. I hope that helps.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no further comment, we'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes 20-2. 2021 resolution 43, accepting resolution accepting American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. Take a motion, Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Mary. Any discussion? Any questions regarding this? Seeing none, we can vote on this electronically. Stand by. Huh? Are we locked up? We don't have that one in there? Oh. You want me to give everybody a little potty break? Yeah. Mary? Should I give them a 5 minute? Okay. We're going to do a voice vote on this one. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? There is no closed session. Our next meeting date, Wednesday, October 13th at 6:00 PM. And we are hereby adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.